Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming. We have more people that are coming as time goes on, so we're going to have everybody just kind of come in when they come in. And so what I think is interesting about this particular event is that it's the only one of its kind that I'm ever going to do. But what's interesting about this one is that I'm bookending the remaining balance of what I believe has been a very spectacular real estate training career. Don't you agree?
Yes.
So I think this is going to be perfect, a perfect ending for real estate. And so the whole purpose of this particular event was for me to introduce to you my investors, which we're going to be doing. How many of you are pitching? All of you are pitching? You're pitching? Are you pitching? Yes? No? You're pitching? You're pitching? You're not pitching. You might change your mind by the end of this, because this is a rare opportunity that you're never going to get anywhere else ever again. And so the good news is that between what we talk about today and tomorrow, I'm going to prepare you so that if you don't think that you're prepared right now, you'll likely change your mind. Okay? I'd strongly urge you to consider pitching. And in the very least, it'll give you practice so that you can feel much more confident as time goes on when you're pitching other investors. So that's my advice to you. If you don't want to follow suit with that, that's on you, but I strongly suggest that you take the opportunity. So here we are, the investor tank, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a crash course on setting up your business, because I believe that it is the most critical component to starting real estate, or actually starting any kind of business. Don't you agree? You have to be able to set up correctly. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of tips and advice about that. And then when we get through this presentation, I'm going to have you guys lead me to what you want me to talk about next, because my next presentation is going to be about business credit. But if you guys feel that after this presentation you feel confident enough that I don't have to talk about that with you guys, then we'll move on to assessing deals. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys the ability to choose your own ending, if you will, or rather your own beginning, right? And be able to, choose what I'm going to be talking about next, all right? Okay, so here we go. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, so secrets to asset protection. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about first, and the reason I want to talk about asset protection first is because, to me, this is the most critical component to building not just a real estate investing business, but any business. And so if you don't do this correctly, unfortunately you set yourself up for potentially a world of trouble later. And so I'm going to describe to you some of the lawsuits I have dealt with in recent past, including one that I just got served last week. And so I'm going to tell you about how you handle those types of things if you set yourself up correctly. And you might be thinking, well, Monica, I'm never doing anything wrong to where I'll never be sued. Travis and I talked about this yesterday. He's a successful real estate investor. And no matter how good-spirited of a person you are, or how well you seem to orchestrate your business dealings, lawsuits happen. It just happens. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong necessarily with your business. It's just that lawsuits sometimes just happen. And so years ago I had some criticism from a couple students that said to me, well, Monica, you're obviously doing something wrong if somebody's suing you. Do you guys agree with that? No. People can sue you because they're your competitor. They want to knock you out of business in some way. They can sue you because they view you as having a lot of money and they think that you're an endless bank account. Like McDonald's got sued over the hot pickle and the hot coffee and all that other stuff.
Walmart gets sued over the trucks.
Walmart, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. When people perceive you as having a lot of money, you can get sued. You can open yourself up. So what I want to do is, instead of having you guys worry about this, I prefer to actually train you in a way that nobody else has trained me before. Nobody else has actually taught me the true asset protection secrets. And it's because I learned them on my own, having had to deal with all of these things myself. So the only way that you can set yourself up properly is by bulletproofing yourself from the very, very, very beginning. We don't want to start setting up an asset protection plan long after it's too late. We certainly don't want to say, well, Monica, I'm a small timer. You know, would you agree with this, Travis? Where it's just like, I don't need to worry about that now because I haven't really started making money yet. No, you kind of have to lay the groundwork first. It's almost like pouring cement is your foundation. And if you don't pour the right cement, if you decide to pour a cement batch that's just mostly sand, unfortunately, when you build your house up, which is your house of wealth building, if you will, if you build it up on quicksand, unfortunately, it's going to be too late for you to try to fix it later. So we want to build all of that up ahead of time before we even get started. Because there's a lot of vultures out there. And a lot of people that are very unscrupulous, they're very miserable. They sometimes think that you're just an endless bank account. So sometimes you find that. Has anybody actually seen a real vulture in real life?
Oh yeah.
They are scary birds. They're really scary. I remember I was in Jamaica. I was going to Bob Marley's place, 9 Mile, and we were going up this windy kind of like mountainous road, and there was this big tree in the kind of the middle of nowhere, and it was this kind of like a mildly overcast day because it was raining a little bit. And just these vultures were just these birds are just huge. And I felt like I was in like a Tim Burton movie or something for a second because they are scary. And so if you ever fell down that cliff and you didn't have water, you're done. That's it. You're done. They will consume you. So that's why they get the name vultures, obviously. So when you set up your shop, initially, it is for 3 key things. Obviously, it's to protect your assets. And by the way, I didn't actually notice that this is starting to pay off until here we are 25 years later. The way I set everything up, it's now paying off 25 years later. So again, if you're thinking, well, Monica said it took about 25 years for all of this to pay off, why should I waste my time now? It's because when you start building your empire, you have to do it correctly from the very beginning. And nobody taught me how to do these things in the very beginning. They don't teach you these types of things. They certainly don't teach you these types of things in school. You also need to build business credit. Get your personal credit on track. How many of you actually have decent personal credit? And by decent, I mean at least a mid-FICO score. Let's go with 740. 720? Are we in the 6s? 6s? Let's work on our personal credit. Because Patricia can tell you, it's not that difficult. What did you start with?
It's around low 6s.
She was in the low 6s. This was not a long time ago. This was like, what, a year ago or so? Yeah.
And now in the 720.
Yeah, 720. So she's in the 7s now. And all of a sudden, all of the credit offerings come pouring in like Niagara Falls.
Credit, 2 new cars.
Yeah, she just got 2 new cars. I mean, so she's doing really, really well. So you do have to build up your personal credit, and then when you do that, you can start building your business credit. And then to protect yourself from financial demise. Now, this is a twofold process, though. Process number 1 on the financial demise is to set yourself up corporate-wise, which I'm going to tell you about how that works. That's part 1 of this. Part 2 of this is that when you build a lot of business credit, so say, for example, you're able to tap into, say, $200,000 on unsecured business credit cards. And all of a sudden, some major catastrophe happens, like a post-2008 catastrophe. Or, in the months to come, post-2020 catastrophe. So, say something like that occurs, and for some strange reason, either you lost all your assets, you lost all your tenants, you lost your business, whatever. What is the use of having access, immediate access to up to, say, $200,000 in unsecured business credit cards at your disposal during a time like that?
Start all over again. Yeah.
Are you worried, really?
No.
Why not?
at all.
Why wouldn't you be worried?
You have credit access. You got access to funds.
You have a cushion now. And what can you potentially use that $200,000 for? Can you use it to buy a brand new Mercedes and a big screen TV? Don't be nodding your head over here.
No. I was going. No. You go back and you look at another real estate property or something like that that's going to give you more passive income.
You could either have a property, you could start a business, a money funnel business, you could start an internet business, some kind of business, right? So you're not limited to what the rest of the paycheck Charlies are. See, I'm really concerned about what's happening now because I'm noticing, and I don't know if you noticed this trend, but a lot of people are buying brand new cars right now. Now,
Pushing, yeah.
why do you guys think that that might be a little alarming for the average Joe Blow to be doing right now?
Well, with the economy going the way it's going, the layoffs will be disheard. The airline industry is going to tank. So that's the reverberation effect of everything else that's going to go on to supporting
It is.
businesses and things like that.
Right, so the problem is, your average Joe Blow, so this is one of the things I appreciate very, very much about the Asian population, is they not only look forward, at least, they try to look forward into their entire lifetime, but also their children and grandchildren's lifetime. And this is how they treat financial, economics. I don't know, so far they're not really doing very well with the environment, but one of these days when they're educated enough, I truly believe that they'll probably put the brakes on what they're doing. I think Beijing is one of the most polluted places in the entire world, but you get the drift, right? They're mostly science, economics. And so the problem with the American population is that if they didn't have it yesterday or they can't get it today, they're simply not interested in pursuing it. And that's really a flawed way of thinking. Because sure, it's nice to live in the now, spiritually. But at the same time, how much do you just throw everything on the back burner to do later and to worry about later? And so I don't know if any of you recall the emails that I've been sending out over the last several months, but I've been warning you that there's some things happening in the months to come. Mostly the foreclosure windfalls coming. 2020 is going to be the start of the year of the bankruptcy, which is going to go into 2021, both personal and corporate bankruptcies. It's going to be a big deal next year. And so all of these people that have been furloughed from their jobs, your average typical employee does not understand how a business works. And so if you've been, unfortunately, on that lower end where you don't understand how a business works, let me tell you how a business, a big corporation, medium-sized corporations, and small businesses think. They are all about survival. All of them are. Okay? So just think of it in terms of this. If you're on a deserted island and it's just you and your dog, that was going to be a bad scenario. It's you and your dog, and you ran out of food weeks ago, and your dog's starving too. So the way a corporation works is, what do you think happens to the dog? Let's call him Charlie.
They eat the dog.
The dog gets eaten for survival, right? Because the person who's on the island is the vessel for future success. And he knows that if he does not survive, there will be no more of, a larger establishment or corporation or entity. And so what they typically do, any and all large corporations, medium-sized corporations, and even small mom-and-pop businesses will do the same thing. Because if they don't ensure their survival today, there will definitely be no jobs tomorrow. That's just the reality. So your typical Joe Blow thinks, oh, that was just a bad stroke of luck that I got laid off at my... But don't you understand what they're doing? If they don't lay you off and thousands of other people today, their company goes bankrupt and everybody loses within 6 months anyway. So it's either all of us lose anyway, or unfortunately you have to take a hit, here's your pink slip, and we're going to try to maintain some level of survival. Maybe in a year or two we can bring you back if we can survive, right? But again, your short-sighted paycheck Charlie does not think that way. He thinks, oh, damn, they should have kept me, they owe me, blah, blah. But first of all, they don't owe you anything. And second of all, they are trying to maintain survival for the future. And so all of these companies you're going to find, this is just the beginning of the cuts, you guys. This is just the beginning of the permanent furlough. I don't know why they're even calling it furlough anymore. You're freaking fired. That's it. It's over. Look for something else. The dream of working as a janitor for Disney is over now, and you just need to find something else.
The furlough thing, from my experience, just goes into, if they fire them, they got to go unemployment, and then they got to start collecting unemployment. That's just so much.
Well, they're already, but when they're furloughed, they're already collecting anyway. So when you're a furloughed employee, you're already collecting. I don't understand why they're calling it that, because if you don't have a job, you don't have a job.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the unemployment's going to run out. The extra stimulus money's going to run out. It's just all going to run out. You guys remember the 2009 bailouts? Mm-hmm. What did that do for anybody on the lower end paycheck Charlie? What about those trickle-down economics?
Thank you, Mr. Reagan.
Did it do anything for anybody? All of that bailout money for the banks and for Ford Motor and all these other people, what did that do for you?
Nothing.
Right. So all of these other bailouts that are coming down the pipeline, all the stimulus packages that are including these corporations, did you forget about 2009?
Nope.
That was 11, 12 years ago. Did you forget? Seems like everybody has a short memory these days. Did you guys forget?
Nope. Got a bigger tax bill.
Yeah.
Got a bigger tax bill.
That's right. You got a bigger tax bill, and that's about it. So please understand that these cycles, they violently repeat themselves over and over and over and over and over again. And this is one of the times where you can actually now protect yourself and potentially not just survive, but thrive in this economy. So instead of being panicked, how many of you know that I actually look forward to every single recession? And I tell you guys vocally every moment I get. And why do you think I look forward to every single recession that comes? Better deals. My business does better, like both of my businesses. You know, the real estate stuff always does better because I get deals. I'm going to now start to get foreclosures, hand over fist. You guys too, if you understand everything I'm going to be talking about over these 2 days. And also too, with the Successful Life stuff that I do, all of that stuff does extremely well as well. Because a lot of it is selling the dream. People ask me what I do. It's like, well, I give them the proper terminology, which is I own and operate a small micro-publishing company. That's what I tell people at cocktail parties, if I actually went to a cocktail party. But what I really do is I sell people a dream. That's what I do. So I do better when we're in an economic demise, for obvious reasons. Most people don't want to do anything to change their lives unless the fire's under their ass, right? Unless they're facing foreclosure, and they're facing bankruptcy, and they're facing the loss of a job. That's when suddenly everybody's motivated to get up off the couch to try to start that new business, right? Or to start that real estate enterprise, right? What the hell are you typing? Are you typing nothing? Get off that.
Answering an audio question.
So, does everybody understand that there's opportunity? Some of the most successful self-made multimillionaires became so after the 1929 crash and after the 2008 crash. It's a lot easier. You can propel yourself forward a lot quicker. Because this is kind of a rhetorical question, but maybe not really. Is it prudent for you to fight with everybody else over the limited inventory on real estate deals right now, paying top of the market? Is that a prudent real estate investing strategy?
No.
Why? Why is that not a prudent real estate investing strategy?
Well,
If you're overpaying, where you get your deal is actually more so on sale than on the buy.
Right. So when you're overpaying, unfortunately, you're now immediately underwater. You're immediately underwater. So it probably would take you on average about 10 on the low side, 10 years, for you to be able to benefit from that asset. But if you just wait a few more months, like 3 to 6 months, when everything just starts collapsing, it's probably going to be sooner than that. Then what? Are you overpaying anymore?
No.
Are you fighting, 20 people over this one piece of inventory that's listed? Nope. Nope. Because then it becomes a supply and demand issue, which is a basic economic rule, right? Supply and demand. So you go to the store and there's 500 pineapples there. And not very many people are interested in pineapple other than myself. And even though I love pineapples, I actually don't like eating pineapple. A lot of people don't know that. I will eat pineapple only in one place in the entire world. Where do you think it is? Hawaii. That's it. Okay, and that's because they grow really good pineapples. Otherwise, it bothers my mouth. It feels, weird. I can't stand regular pineapple. So if everybody's kind of like me, or you're walking into a store and there's 500 pineapples there and they're starting to rot away, what kind of supply and demand issue do we now have?
oversupply.
We have an oversupply. So what happens to the price of those pineapples? They go way down, way down, because nobody wants to buy them. So then they got to do a fire sale to get rid of them all. But what happens if all of a sudden California's decided to start importing Hawaiian pineapples, and everybody knew that they were the best ones, and and there's 3 pineapples left, and you have a whole town full of people that want pineapples.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, the price goes way up because there's a supply and demand. That's what's happening right now with the inventory in real estate, right? Where everybody's fighting over the last little bit. When everybody gets to this point, by the way, I want you to take a very, very clear note about this. Do not buy anything. In fact, Nick is one of the investors that wants it. He's going to come a little later on Sunday. I had to tell, he learned this entire business from me by just attending this event, coming to this event as a financer. He was basically part of the mortgage industry. So he started doing he just did a speaking engagement here in this room. And he was sitting in the back of the room listening to me talk for like 3 days. He decided, instead of just being a guest speaker, he was going to run out and start buying real estate. So far he's got now, it's been a handful of years, 13 or 14 properties. Just from sitting in this room and listening to what I had to say. And he just went out and started buying stuff. But I even told Nick, because he called me earlier this year, he was like, how's it going? Every once in a while he calls me just randomly out of the blue. And I says, everything's great. And I says, how's real estate? And he's like, it's great. I'm closing on another 2 properties. I'm like, stop buying. Stop it. Does anybody know why I told him that?
Because recession's on the way, and when the recession comes, everything goes really low.
Yeah, so what his methodology was, which is a little flawed, I just think it's because he's an Italian little impatient, spark plug is what he is. But, so he can't wait for anything. But he's like, well, it all evens out in the end. So if I get some deals on some stuff and I don't later, then it all just evens out. Why do that, right? So, but that's his thing, and that's fine. But stop buying because now we're coming into this massive foreclosure windfall. And does anybody want to know how I know this?
Monitoring your area, what you've been into.
It's already starting in some spots.
It's already starting. 1,
Going slow.
2.
It's following what history is showing before.
It's history. That's correct. 100% correct. But listen to this. Think if you're never sure. Everybody's always kind of eerily fascinated with the fact that I could usually forecast these things relatively accurately. And I only do one thing, you guys, and that is I think in terms of the higher-ups. What is happening? So everybody else is always thinking, oh, what's happening with Paycheck Charlie? Well, the dude lost his job. He was postmating every day because he thought he was going to get this endless stimulus check from the government, not thinking that it was going to end at some point. Who the hell knows why people think that way, but they do. And so we don't want to think like them. So let's start thinking like the people that are up the chain, okay? So, you're a business owner and you rent a unit from someone. We're going a little farther up. We're not at Paycheck Charlie level anymore. We're not at business owner level who rent a unit from someone. What's happening to that business owner who is unable to sustain themselves financially because of the pandemic? What's happening to him or her who is trying to make monthly payments to their landlord? What's happening?
They're not making a business. They're now starting to go under. They're starting to.
Now, a lot of the Paycheck Charlies think, because they don't do research, they don't ask questions, they don't know jack nothing, they think that these landlords are giving all of their tenants a break. And while that may be the case for the person who's renting an apartment someplace, do you think that that's happening for the average mom and pop store or business somewhere? Yes or no?
No.
No. I talk to every business owner I possibly can, and I ask them questions that probably nobody else asks them when I walk into the door. I said, did your landlord give you any break on your rent during the pandemic? What do you think the vast majority of them told me? No. No, they all have the same thing too. Yeah, my landlord's an asshole, and he just didn't let me have anything. So basically, that's the same replay of everybody I've talked to. There's been one exception, one tiny strip mall, 2 owners that I know that rent there, a donut store owner and a cleaners where I get all my clothes cleaned. They gave them 3 months. But when you're a cleaner, barely making the rent anyway, or a donut, first of all, how many donuts do you have to sell just to make your normal rent anyway? So if somebody gives you 3 months, but the pandemic's gone on for 7, what are we at, 7, 8 months now?
Yeah, it's a year.
Forever, right now. What's 3 months going to really do for you if you make donuts? Not a lot. But that was something, and I did appreciate the landlord trying to do something. But everybody else I talked to said their landlord said you either make the payment or get the hell out. Everybody else. What do you think that means? Remember the dog on the island?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so if they know that they got to hump that load every single month, if they're going to have a hope, because most business owners don't like to let go. Even though in many cases it would just be easier for them to let go and just pack up their stuff and go find some other place to rent later on when everything kind of gets back to normal. But a lot of them just psychologically can't let go, or they were on a momentum before all this happened, so they're just going to try to stick it out. So what's the first thing that happens to, say, 3, 4, or 5 employees?
You let them.
Sorry, I gotta protect myself because I'm the one who's the vessel to ensure that you even have a future here. And if I can't make this work for the next few months, then there's not going to be a job for me to bring you back to. And of course, the average paycheck Charlie's like, well, you're just a dick, and you're in it. Well, no, I mean, he's trying to protect the capsule, the vessel, right? So let's move up the chain a little further. You're a landlord now of a strip mall. What's going on with those guys now? Like, is everybody humping the load, and is everybody making those payments, and is everybody being able to just pull their savings together to make these rent payments? Is everybody being able to try to submit their payment?
No. Garrett tell you, next week or next month I'll try to.
Yeah, or
hanging them out.
Yeah, or evict me.
Yeah.
And then let's tie this up in a year because the courts are closed and nobody's even allowed to evict at this point anyway because of the moratorium. And once the moratorium ends, what do you think is going to happen with the court load?
Oh boy.
Okay, well your court case is September of 2020.
see you in 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just stay in the unit until then because but then commercial units are different because they can actually lock their tenants out. You guys didn't know that, did you? They can actually lock their tenants out. You can't lock somebody out when it's a residential, but you can lock someone out when it's a commercial space. So you're going to notice a lot of lockouts. So now that you own a building and half your tenants are not paying, what's happening to you now?
You can't make your payment.
You can't make your payment. You still got a note on it.
You have a note, you have a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So what happens when you're calling your mortgage company? What do they tell you?
Sorry.
I'll tell you what
Later, you're out.
the mortgage companies are like, well, I talk to everybody I could talk to about this. I've been in a really lucky position, but I talk to others who are not as lucky as I am. And they're telling me that yes, they told me that I could, have kind of hit the pause button on some of my payments. But unfortunately, come, the third or fourth month, not only do I have to make that next payment, but I also have to pay everything I didn't pay. Like everything. So say, for example, your mortgage payment was $5,000 a month. And the fourth month comes up. You still have to make that $5,000 and then the $15,000 you didn't make. So $20,000. Now, if you're barely hanging on by a thread, is that going to work for you?
No.
Does everybody see where this is going?
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to lead you through this like this is because this is how I figure things out. I'm not brilliant at all by any stretch of the imagination. I certainly don't know much about math. I just get by barely. And yet I'm able to figure this out because I think my way up the chain. And the only person I don't consider in all of this is who?
Paycheck Charlie.
Paycheck Charlie. Why not?
He's irrelevant.
Because he's not irrelevant, but I understand just how short-sighted they are. They think, I'm serious, I just talked to my assistant Shaylin a couple weeks ago about this. She's 22 years old, one of the youngest people I've ever hired. She's fantastic. And she told me, on, I don't know, TikTok, I don't know much about TikTok, but she's like, oh yeah, it's the running joke now among the millennials, all the things we no longer can do now because the stimulus money ran out. And one of the things was, we can't order DoorDash anymore, and all this other stupid, I'm like, they wasted their money on DoorDash, every day?
Yeah.
Every day?
I work for a delivery company, and they are just blowing their money.
Mm-hmm. Blowing their money on the stupidest crap.
On food, they're blowing it on food.
They're lazy.
There's nothing wrong with blowing it on food, but you know how much Postmate and DoorDash and Grubhub, all that is?
Yeah.
A lot.
Why are you so freaking lazy to where you can't go to the store and make
you can buy, for
something?
that same money, you could buy 3 or 4 days.
You could
worth
buy,
of
yeah,
food,
you could go to
versus-
Costco and buy like a pallet full of macaroni and cheese for $10. You know what I mean? Why are you Postmates? Like, but they think it's a freaking joke. What's happening now? So how much further ahead are you guys going to be by simply not thinking like that? Now, many of you know I do really, really well financially, right? But here's what I didn't go do, like everybody else, paycheck Charlie level. I didn't go buy a new car. Normally I buy a new car like every 2 to 3 years like clockwork. And I didn't. I didn't this year. In fact, I was supposed to trade the BMW in last December. And I'm like, I still don't have 15,000 miles on it. I still don't. I went to go see her like 3-4 months ago. I went to stay at her house. And I'm just like, I decided to buy out the lease. Because what am I going to do? I'm going to turn in a car that has 12,000 miles on it after 3 years.
Right.
And get another vehicle to start another payment plan of $1,500 a month. To then turn it back in with between 7,000 and 12,000 miles. And then I keep the cycle going. I'm like, I'm going to buy this BMW. Just buy it out. And so I was talking to her when I was staying at her house. I'm like, I just had to buy it out because why would I want to start over? So I'm like, it doesn't even have 15,000 miles, and I'm like, that's not 50, not 50, it's 15.
It's so far under the.
And I drove it like last week, and I started laughing about that conversation because I'm like, it's still not at 15. It's still at 15,000. It's like 14 and something change, but I like barely drive it. And so even though the blue book is like way, way lower than what I ended up buying it out, do you see my methodology and what I was doing? To me, it was worth the buyout because the alternative was to turn it back in, to take the heavy depreciation on another car that doesn't hold any value at all. Really good cars, they hold no value, zippo and value. So these are the types of things you think about to not be like the paycheck Charlie. So even though I could go out, not just buy a car, a fleet of cars if I wanted to, why am I not going out to buy another car right now? When everybody else, all the other paycheck Charlies and door dashers out there are running out and spending every dime that they have left, thinking apparently, foolishly rather, because this has never happened in any other time in history, that the government is just giving you a check for the rest of your life. I mean, this is not, Publishers Clearinghouse, okay? But they're doing it anyway. They're that short-sighted and that stupid. Well, why do you think I pulled back?
Just it's not overpriced, but
I just don't find the necessity in wasting money in that way because I'd rather use my resources for the opportunities that are coming up instead of throwing it into another car that I barely ever drive.
Depreciate, it doesn't make
It's not making any money. It's not an asset. It's not an asset at all, right? So this is the difference between how people who make a lot of money think and those who don't. It's very simple. Holding back and pulling back and being disciplined with your money versus DoorDash on government stimulus checks. Right? I'm serious. And the more that you make the connection between these smart and not so smart decisions, the faster you'll become wealthy in this new economic environment that's coming up. All right? So, this is where the good stuff comes in. So the very first thing that you need to do is to start a corporation in your home state. So if your home state's California, then you start your corporation in California. If your home state's here in Michigan, then you start your corporation in Michigan. If your home state's in Nevada, you start your corporation in Nevada. Right? Travis is in Minnesota, so he would start his in Minnesota. Tori's in Florida, so she's going to start hers in Florida. You already have a corporation. I don't know if you do, Patricia. Patricia would start hers in Arizona, because that's where she lives. So I don't want anybody walking up to me later and saying, but Monica, this lawyer in this small, tiny ad that I read in Fortune magazine said that I could open up a Wyoming corporation, or a Nevada corporation, or a Delaware corporation. Great. Do you live in any of those states? Because if the answer is no, then you don't open up a corporation there. And I will sometimes have attorneys who are in the business of selling Nevada corporations try to argue with me. What is their benefit of arguing against me on this issue? Well, of course, none to them.
But you're selling.
Well, because their business is setting up corporations for people, right? So obviously they're going to try to stand behind their product. But the problem with starting a corporation outside of the state in which you have your headquarters, there's potential interstate commerce violations there. There's potential issues with your corporate veil not covering you legally in the event that you need to be covered. I had a really sharp attorney tell me this. He says, really good attorneys can use the whole alter ego defense when they're attacking you. If they're suing your corporation and say you have a Nevada corporation and you're in Minnesota. What they could do is say, this is really kind of a sham corporation. He's using this as an alter ego, meaning that he's just basically standing behind a corporation that's really not real because he doesn't live in Nevada. He lives in Minnesota. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to use that same defense to attack your company if you have your Minnesota corporation. I'm like, no, I operate business here. What the hell? What? You know? And so the only way that they would be able to get behind the corporate veil is fraud, like blatant, brazen fraud. And if you weren't keeping up to date with all your corporate resolution, paperwork, all your filings, etc. But otherwise, it's a hard trek for them to prove an alter ego response in the event that you are operating an S corporation in your home state. Which brings me to the next kind of corporation, which we want an S corporation. So all corporations are born a C corporation, unless you specifically get an LLC. Now, do I recommend an LLC as your umbrella corporation, yes or no?
No.
No, I used to years ago, we're talking 10 plus years ago, when the IRS regulations were different. They would allow something called single member back then. Nowadays they still kind of do, but it's still iffy as far as I can tell. And the reason I know it's iffy is because I had a single member LLC. A single member means you're the only person on it. There's no other entities, there's no other corporations that are your partner. It's just you, and you can call it a single member LLC, because an LLC is designated for partnerships. That's what it's built for. I had a lovely IRS letter in 2011 after I filed my tax filing for this one particular LLC that I had, and they said, either change the designation of your corporation or add a partner. You have those two choices. In other words, you can't be a single member. So even though I've had students argue with me, it's like, well, the reason you probably didn't get that letter is because you're not putting any money through the corporations like I do. So there's a big difference between, when you're filing tax returns that have millions of dollars on them versus zero, right? So obviously if you have a zero, the likelihood that you're going to get a letter from the IRS about that is probably close to zero, right? But because I was having significant tax returns on the single member LLC, they're like, yeah, no. You can't do it this way. I don't know who told you that, but you can't do it this way. So ever since then, needless to say, I don't have LLCs without another partner on the LLC. And I'll explain to you exactly how this works with real estate in the next few minutes, okay? So we want an S corporation. So your corporation that you get in your home state is going to start as a C corporation. How do you convert it from a C to an S, and why do you want to convert it from a C to an S?
Flow through file of paper.
Yeah.
11.
Okay, so let's first, I hear a lot of mumbling. So let's first talk about the benefits of an S corporation versus a C corporation. A C corporation is mostly for very large companies like GE, Ford, etc., where it's a double taxation standard. So basically, they pay taxes on the corporate level on all of their profits, and then all the flow down goes to CEOs and all that other stuff, whoever's basically running the company, and usually it's through stock dividends and so forth. So the way my accountant described this to me years ago, he said, the reason that they never pay taxes on any of that profit is because there is never any profit. Does anybody know how that's possible?
Write-offs.
There's never any profit.
Right.
Never. Because all of the money flows down to dividends and, shareholders. So at the very end, say their fiscal year ends on, that's the other thing with the C corporation, your fiscal year can end on the last day of any given month that you choose. Usually it starts off ending the last day of the month you formed it. That's how it starts. So say it's June 30th. So by June 29th, all of that money is dispersed out. Every dime of it. So there is nothing to pay taxes on come July 1st. Nothing. It's all dispersed out to shareholders, dividends, etc., write-offs, CEO bonuses. Everybody always wonders how these people get all the bonuses. It's because they basically gut all of the profits out at the last minute. So that's how that works. You're not at that level, guys, and that's cool. I mean, you don't ever have to be able to work the system the same way as Donald Trump does. Paying no money on his tax returns is because he does it legally through the loopholes that are provided. You can use these same loopholes too. You can. So this is how you do it. So when you get your corporate resolution paperwork in the mail, usually comes by FedEx, you can then go to the irs.gov website and you first get your EIN, which is your employer identification number that's equivalent to your company's social security number. This is what you're going to use to build your corporate credit. And then, once you do that, once you get your EIN, and by the way, always be connected to a printer so you can print it out. You're going to have to take this to your bank to get a business bank account. You don't want to be doing this on your laptop or the airplane or something unless you can save it as a PDF file. And then once you have your EIN number, immediately, like within minutes after getting your EIN number online with the government, you can then file Form 2553. And then I think to this day, they require you to either mail it in or fax it in. I don't know why. It's the government, So I usually do both. Make sure you guys are going to get this paperwork. And so usually it takes about 6 to 8 weeks. They will send you a letter in the mail that says, congratulations, not really, but you get the point. Congratulations, but you're now an S corporation. Save this with your corporate paperwork. So is that when you just throw it in the trash and walk away? Recycle? What do you do with this letter that you get from the IRS?
Well, you hold it, you're going to bring it to the accountant.
You have to keep it with your corporate docs because I've had situations in the past where the government's like, you're a C corporation. What are you talking about? Like, you never filed this paperwork. It's like, no, look at this letter you just sent to me. Was this not from you? Is this not you? Is this one of these phishing scams from, Pakistan or something? Because I have a letter that has your IRS at the top. So you keep all of your stuff together. And so what an S corporation allows you to do as a smaller time operator is take 100% flow down of all the profits to your personal tax bracket. So say, for example, with your real estate business, you end up making $1 million. So after you write everything off that you possibly can, by the way, this is another tax tip from my CPA that I use, claim everything. Claim everything. Just write off everything too. Everything you legally can, right? Claim everything. So all of these landlords that are putting money under their mattress and all of that, first of all, does anybody know why that's just a bad idea? If you're a landlord and you're collecting cash and you just never deposit it or you don't even, tell the IRS you get it,
Well,
why is that a problem right off the bat?
No documentation of it.
Yeah, there's no documentation. Okay, so say for example you decide you want to sell the building. What are you going to say to the person who's trying to buy your property? Well, I got cash and it's all under my mattress. And I lie to the IRS every single year and I tell them I make way less. But here's the price of my building. You want to buy it? What are you going to do as a potential buyer of that building? Like, well, I don't know if what you're telling me is true. And by the way, you just admitted to tax fraud. You have no idea how many apartment building owners have admitted to tax fraud over and over again. And they think it's just a thing, like it's just a bar conversation. It's just normal. Like the DoorDash thing. It's just like a basic.
so you're defrauding the federal government. and you
You're
want me to-
defrauding the federal
You're
government.
going to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
You're defrauding the government, but yet suddenly you're telling me the truth about how you're socking away all this money. So let's come down on the price just to reflect what you're making on paper. Let's do it that way, you know. And that's what ends up happening. So if you're an apartment building owner or a commercial building owner and you're doing that, taking cash from people and not depositing it in your business checking account, then unfortunately, first of all, we don't want to defraud the IRS or any government agency at all. Get you in a lot of trouble quick. But also too, if you're ever wanting to sell the building, you can validate the fact that you've made all of those deposits from all of those people renting from you, and you can support your asking price. You can't support your asking price if you're claiming half of what you're really making. It doesn't make sense on paper, and even worse, unless they're cashing out and paying you 100% cash, which most people don't, the bank that they're working with is going to demand that paperwork from you, including all of your IRS tax filings. And if all of those are fraudulent because you claimed 50% of what you made, then you're not going to be able to get that lender to lend on that building. So there's too many problems with that. So like my CPA says, deposit everything, claim everything, and write off everything. That's how the game works. That's how you legally make it work. So an S corporation then allows 100% flow down of all profits to you. So that means that you have your S corporation. What state are you in?
Texas.
Texas. So you have your S corporation in Texas, and say you've grossed $1 million. And then after you wrote everything off, all of a sudden you're down, you got $100,000 that you made in profits. So you'll get something called a K-1 from your own company, and the K-1 is something that you bring to your tax form. It's kind of like a W-2 that, you know, Paycheck Charlie gets. Same thing. And so you basically give that to your tax person, and then they use that. It's again, the same exact type of document that you would give like a W-2 form. And that is how you claim your personal taxes. So when people ask me, then what do I have to pay on that? Why does Monica May not know what you have to pay on that?
What you paid.
I have no idea what your tax bracket is. What is your tax bracket as a single male, you know, not married? What is your tax bracket with, you know, 12 kids? There's like a lot of things. I don't, you, 12 kids.
Yeah, 31 of them.
But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything. I can't, I'm not a CPA, and even if I was, it would probably take me hours to figure that out, right? So it just depends on what your personal tax bracket is that determines what you have to pay on that full flow down of the profits. So in other words, the corporation itself does not pay on the profits, doesn't pay taxes. There's no double taxation on an S corporation. That's why we want to be an S corporation. Now, LLCs and S corporations have one thing in common, and that is that they both have a tax year that ends on December 31st. So unlike a C corporation that you can have end on any last day of any given month, an S corporation and an LLC end on December 31st. But you need to make sure, as a new, I don't know if any of you are new S corporation owners, but if you are, your tax filings are due a full month before your regular personal tax filings are due. So what does that mean as far as your tax filings on your tax forms that you have to file? It's going to be on 1120S. When is that due? Based on the information I gave you. When is your tax filing for your S corporation due? If it's a full month before your personal tax filings are due. Not in reference to 2020 at all, because this year just does not count. Thank you, Tori, way in the back, because everybody else looks really confused. March 15th is when your S corporation is due. I know Ron missed his deadline once because he thought it was the same as everybody else. It's not April 15th, it's March 15th. They want your corporate tax returns a full month before your personal tax returns are due. Remember, claim everything, all right? So we already talked about why we're not using an out-of-state corporation. So you start off with the umbrella. And first of all, I want to talk about the EIN, how important it is. I just kind of talked about this. It's your social security number for your corporation. Your corporation is a legal entity, just like any other person born in the United States of America. Did you know that? And you treat your baby as such. You protect it, you nurture it, you file all your paperwork for it, You just don't throw it in a corner and completely ignore it. You know, this is what you're also going to use as a tool for maximum leverage to build business credit. This is essential and highly necessary. Okay, so again, EIN is equivalent to the Social Security number of your new baby, which is your S corporation in your home state. By the way, you can actually have law firms set this stuff up for you. I don't think they do it in Minnesota. It's amerilawyer.com. I don't think they do Texas either. They do New York?
Yeah, New York.
They do New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Arizona, Florida. Did I say Illinois? California, Nevada. There's another state I'm missing. So it's amerilawyer.com. AMERI lawyer.com. I highly recommend them. It's a couple $100 to set up your corporation. And if you don't feel that you're able to do the EIN stuff or the S corporation paperwork, for an extra fee, they can do that for you as well. Just remember though, all they're going to do is prepare. They'll get you the EIN and it'll come with your corporate docs, but they will not send out the S corporation 2553 form for you. So it's a common mistake that most people will get their corporate docs and just throw it on a shelf someplace. Oh, I'll need this when I open up my bank account. But you immediately have to sign and mail that 2553 form in. And if you don't, you will not be designated as an S corp. So don't assume that they're just because they got you an EIN, they are automatically getting you an S corporation designation. They don't. It's not how it works. You have to mail that in. And they even provide you with the envelope.
Yeah.
You just have to put a stamp on it and sign it and throw it in the mail. Okay, so this is how this works. When you are applying for corporate credit after you set up your corporation, then you can start building business credit, but you do have to have decent personal credit first. And by decent, I mean at least a mid-FICO score of at least 740. Patricia, are you already building your credit, your business credit?
Not yet.
Did you get yourself an S corporation yet? Okay.
It's my next order priority.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody stays on track, because again, this is us now. Pretend like we are now building our multi-million-dollar real estate or any other type of empire, and we are now staring at graded land. You would appreciate this, right? He's a builder also. And so you're staring at the graded land, and you're now pouring the cement. That's what we're doing right now. So pouring the cement with our S corporation, our EIN, our Form 2553 that's got to go out. We're pouring our cement. So again, we don't want to turn this into a quicksand disaster. We want to make sure that it's done properly. Because by doing this properly, we can now take full advantage of getting maximum leverage of OPM or other people's money through accessing nearly unlimited unsecured credit. And so my daughter asked me the other day, she's like, Mom, do you have a Black American Express card yet? I'm like, where are you getting this? I'm like, well, not yet. I have a couple platinums, and they just bought me up on Delta, and I got their, like, I don't know what it is. The cards are metal now. They're coming metal.
Very cool.
And I don't like that too much. It's like harder to slide in the machine now, and I don't know. So I have a platinum, though, that they claim doesn't really have a limit, but kind of does. So it's kind of like, I don't even know what their soft cap limit is. Like, I don't even know if I could go walk into a place and charge $100,000, but I could probably do it. So I have access to a lot of unsecured credit. I don't use it. I use the bare minimum, because if you don't use your cards at least once a year, they start shutting your cards off. So I'll run them usually through my own merchant account, $100 here, $100 there, and then pay it off the next month, just so that they don't shut my cards off. Because they start to do that during tougher economic times. They will start to go back and see who's not using their cards, and then they'll just start automatically sending out letters and shutting your cards off. You don't want that. So all of you that have mid-FICOs of a minimum of 720, you need to now start getting business credit cards. So what's going to happen is that when you do go to American Express, like American Express will probably be one of the first ones that you get a mailing piece from after you file your corporate docs. They just have you on some mailing list, and you will be able to then apply immediately. They'll usually offer you, I think, the gold card right off the bat. Did they offer you that? Yeah, it's usually it starts with the gold, then they'll bump it up to platinum within a short time after that. And American Express is a good company to get into because they were going to offer you all kinds of stuff. Like for example, when everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket, I ended up deciding to take advantage of some of the loan programs that were out there just to have a cushion. SBA gave me $150,000. I went to them directly. And then I could not get the Paycheck Protection Program through the government because it was just chaos by then. Guess who ended up giving me the Paycheck Protection Program money? American Express did. That's right. In fact, it even got to the point where didn't you call SBA and they actually told you to go through American Express? I mean, that's how bad when the government's telling you to go through somebody else. Go to American Express, some completely unrelated company to the government, So that's how powerful they are. And they're always offering all kinds of unsecured lines of credit, like when you're paying everything. I mean, every single time I log into my account, some new box pops up. Well, did you know that you can get this and this and that, and this other type of loan? And, that's what happens when you have a really good payment history. So American Express is really it's a really essential part to building business credit. So, again, it kind of works the same way as regular personal credit, except now, when you apply for your American Express or your other business credit card, you're now putting your EIN number and your personal Social Security number on the application. They are tying you to your business now. Now, I know some students are like, why do they do that? Well, thank Bush for that, because due to the Patriot Act, they are now tying people to their businesses just to negate any funding for terrorism, whatever the whole Patriot Act thing was about. That's why they are doing that. So now, the long gone are the days when you were able to just get unsecured credit without the attachment of your Social Security number. So those days are long gone. So they attach you to it, which is why you have to have a decent FICO score to make this work. Which is fairly easy to get, don't you think, Patricia? Don't you think, Tori? Both of them were like, I'm just like looking at their credit going, what? Like, pay your bills once in a while, But now you...
2009 debacle right there.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it. Tori too, but Tori I'm really proud of. I mean, she did really, really well. I mean, you're 735, what were you before? She was 450. She was one of the lowest, I think the lowest credit report, the lowest FICO score I've ever seen was around 350. Yeah. Yeah, she did 200 points in 120 days by just doing everything that I talk about in that thin little book that I have, right? So that's probably my most successful program. And the reason it's most successful is because everybody has a Social Security number and everybody thinks it's doable. And so they do it, mostly out of necessity, because they understand that you cannot function in society without credit, good credit. The reason some of the other things, people just sometimes get my apartment riches course and like Dave Marcus, just throw it on a shelf someplace, never open it out of the shrink wrap. I have no control over that. I know, Mr. Dave. But I have to say that because credit is so essential, because people get off their ass quicker because they know they can't get a car, some people can't even get a job. How many people have, how many people do you know, maybe yourself, where you could not get a job because your FICO score wasn't high enough, your credit was in disarray? Especially government jobs.
And banks won't touch you. They won't do any financial, stock market, they won't touch you.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you rather pay? Would you rather pay the 0% interest I have on my Lincoln right now, or would you rather pay 21% interest at the local, John's car shop on the corner? On the Pinto. Right. You can make these choices. You can either sit there and say, oh, life has been bad to me because of X, Y, Z, or you can just get off your ass and fix it, right? There are certain people that I've met in the course of my lifetime, your mom being one of them, where they think being financially negligent and not taking good care of your credit, I don't know, pays off for today, but doesn't see that there's a tomorrow and there's a next week and next month and next year. So I hope that you decide not to take any advice from her about financial credit or anything for that matter in life, and that you decide to take really good care of your credit. His brother Tyler, right when he was of age, I should probably do the same for you. I actually, did you get your credit card yet? A credit card?
Yes.
Yeah, did your dad help you out with that?
Yes.
Good. Make sure you make all the payments on time. So, Tyler, right when he turned 18, I was on the phone with him and I helped him do his Capital One application right then and there, because Capital One's a really good starting company. Capital One's also a big company like American Express, and they can do a lot of solids for you if you are in their good graces. If you're not, that's a completely different story. Complete opposite, like they turn into, she-wolf or something. But if you take good care of them, in other words, making your payments, they will take good care of you. So I started him off with Capital One, and it was a small card. I think, I don't know, $500 or something. And then I don't know what he's up now. I should ask him. But he probably got more credit cards too. He got his own car. He has a new Volkswagen. He did that under his own credit, right?
I co-signed on the car, but he's got a Best Buy card and some other card also now. He bought his laptop from college with his Best Buy card.
Right, so now he's got, right, so yeah, they approved him on the spot for Best Buy, and I taught him and I pounded it in his head. He was probably looking at me rolling his eyeballs, wanting to roll his eyeballs, if he didn't want to get punched in the head. But, like, why do you keep telling me this? Why do you keep telling me this? What's the matter with you? Well, do you want to be like your mom, paying 21% interest for a car that the motor just went out, and now you got to buy a new motor because you had to get a crappy car? I mean, just all of it, like there's just so many disadvantages by just not doing this one simple thing. I remember one of the credit files that I worked with for one of my students years ago, and he had the stupidest stuff on his credit report. He had a cleaners on his credit report for like $74 or something, like a bunch of tiny, and I'm like, first of all, I've never seen anybody with a local yokel ABC cleaners on his credit report. Like, how does that even happen?
Like collections, collection.
No, it was from the cleaners on his credit report. And there was a bunch of other tiny little, I'm like, dude, his name was Hugh. You gotta pay your fucking bills. You know what I mean? Like we can help you to a certain degree, but if you're gonna let stuff like this go because you just want to be purposely and maliciously negligent, there's only so much I can do for you. Because it seems like I'm trying to pull all the weight and you're just sitting in the back seat, sleeping, right? So I don't know whatever happened to him. He ended up having a baby, and then I want to say that he emailed me a while back, like a few months ago, just to ask how I was doing. He's really a super sweet guy. Talk about a total zen, spiritual dude. I don't know if you remember Hugh, do you?
I don't.
He was like a taller, thin, lighter skinned black guy. Really sweet.
Super laid back.
You would think that you're meeting Buddha when you have a conversation with him.
Was it when we stayed in
Yeah, the Airbnbs before that was a thing. It's like he would stay with these hippie families and stuff.
we
It's like,
stayed in Brightmore?
yeah, Brightmore, which is not a good neighborhood.
They can live your own hands.
Yeah, really sweet guy. But but at the same time, so laid back and kind of so disconnected with reality, and probably so spiritually out there that he forgets that you gotta play the game if you're gonna get anywhere. So let me explain to you how this whole thing works as far as asset protection, kind of in real time. Because recently, 2 weeks ago, I was actually served a lawsuit, and I'm going to share with you how this can actually unfold for you when it comes to asset protection. Since I can't see this rinky-dinky screen up here, I gotta look. So basically, most of you know the Credit Secrets book, right?
You're gonna get it later.
Yeah, you're gonna get it later. We're actually missing a shipment, but you guys are gonna get it if you don't have it. So then that way you can utilize all of the tips and strategies in that book. So what ended up happening was I met this guy 2 years ago at a Dan Kennedy Mastermind group in July of 2018. And so he has an infomercial with the Larry King credit stuff. And so I don't know if many of you realize, but I've had my credit stuff out since 2009. And I started giving away these free books at some of my seminars and events just to help people with their credit, like I'm going to do with you guys at this event. Because I found that wasting a lot of time talking about this when you could just read it and do it is just much more conducive for everyone's time, because some people have a decent credit score and they don't want to sit and slug through, another presentation. So what was weird is that Dan Kennedy is like, you should talk to this guy, this Jay, whatever his name was, because you've been in credit forever. I've been in kind of like the credit business, if you will, since about 1995. It's been a long time. But it was 2009 when I came out with the corporate credit stuff. So I've had my credit stuff around forever. So I talked to the guy for a little bit, thought he was kind of a douchebag, and so I'm just like, I just did it just because they had asked me to, and I wasn't going to, offend him. So I just talked to the guy for a short time. And then I'm just like trying to end the conversation, because when somebody has an off-putting personality, you're just like, okay, so I'll just send you what I have. I'll just send you my credit stuff. If you think we can do a joint venture, great. If not, oh well. So right when I got back, I sent him every credit thing that I had in my warehouse, including my credit book, including my 2 credit courses, which is my personal credit builder and my Build Business Credit Fast course. I sent everything to him. Even still have all the shipping information for me, because I had to pull it all for the lawsuit. Never heard from the guy. No text, no call, nothing, and I was just, who cares, it wasn't a big deal. So now, fast forward to 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, oh, you ripped off our cover, you ripped off our art, you ripped off this, you ripped off that. Even going so far as to claim that the stuff in the book I ripped off, which I did not. Because when I noticed that he had a book that was like mine, I purchased it to make sure that he didn't rip off the contents of my book. And then when I read it, I'm like, no, this isn't mine. I'm like, it looks eerily similar, but it's not mine, so it's no big deal, right? What was interesting about this whole thing is that, first of all, they're trying to claim trademark to credit secrets. There's so many Amazon books that start with credit secrets, it's insane. Yet I'm the one who gets sued, right? Because I'm the one with money.
You're the big fish.
Yep. Also, too, they're claiming that the piece of art that I got from a download site online that's royalty-free that I paid for a license for is theirs, even though their art is different but slightly similar. So they're claiming somebody else's art is theirs, which is widely available. All of you in this room can actually go get that art right now and put it on your book, too. But they're claiming it's theirs, even though it's different than what they have. And then they're also claiming, like I said, the trademark to the book. Oh, and then they have the nerve to claim that the stuff inside the book is theirs too. Even though I know damn well that is my writing. Anybody who's actually read the book, which when you get it later, I strongly suggest that you read through at least the first couple pages. You'll clearly see that's the way Monica May writes. This is not anybody else's stuff. Like I said, I've been selling the stuff since like 95. So I know my stuff with credit. I didn't copy anything of theirs. But this is what happens sometimes when you're in the world of business, And what was so interesting and eerie about this whole thing is that I was actually talking to myself about how the cover is outdated. I've been using it for a long time, and I've been wanting to update the cover. I was just going to do it like organically. And so all of a sudden now there's this lawsuit about the cover. But they want me to, it even gets better too. They want me to give up all my domains.
Excuse me?
But don't specify any specific domains that they want. I own over 200 domains, some of which I have as trademarks. So I thought that was a little ballsy.
Well, you got to ask for everything,
Right, but you got to be specific. What domains are you talking about? You can't just say, well, we want the domains. Well, what domains, You want some from the penis enlargement stuff that we used to do years ago? Do you want the stuff from the skincare stuff we used? What domains are you talking about? Trust me, this is the most amateur type of setup that I've ever seen. But yeah, well, because they're just when you're doing billable hours, doesn't matter how hideous and ridiculous it is. No, it's just like, especially since if you're hard up, you're dealing with a lot of business owners that maybe don't have money to pay you now. You're going to take any case you possibly can. So they want me to change the name of my book. Even though, this even gets better. They tried to file a USPTO trademark for credit secrets, and it was denied by the U.S. government. They said, no, you cannot have that trademark. But then they want me to turn around and change the name of my book on a trademark they don't know. They also want me to change the color scheme of my book, the picture on my book that, again, they don't know. They don't even have that picture on their book. It's just kind of, they think it's similar. I don't think it's similar at all. And they want me to change, they're claiming ownership to this royalty-free art that's still available again online for a small fee. You can pay for it for $49. But it's theirs, of course. Any and all domains, since I own over 200 domains, they haven't specified what domains, who knows. And then relinquish, this is the worst part, the intellectual property inside that I wrote. And then the attorney that took my case, well, the first one that I blew off because I didn't think he knew what he was talking about, but he's like, well, you know, if you don't respond to this lawsuit, then they could get everything. And I'm like thinking, okay, how does that work? Because say I didn't respond at all, and they put a judgment on there. First of all, there's no financial demand. None. But so in case you guys don't know how lawsuits work, let me give you the breakdown. When normal attorneys file a lawsuit, we want $10 million, we want whatever.
Right.
No, nothing. Nope. No list of domains that they want, no money. They want all the accounting of the book. And here's my kicker. I've given this book away for free since 2013. So how many sales do I have for this book?
0. Mm-hmm.
0. But they made no financial demand. So what happens then, in the event that I walk away into the sunset, I croak, whatever, they are able to get all the stuff they're asking for? First of all, what do they get?
Nothing. Well, what do they get if worst case?
What happens if worst case scenario, I was in a coma and I did nothing on this case. They served me and then I passed out in a coma.
That's it.
They get a judgment for what?
But that's the point. For what? There's nothing other than what.
There's no financial demand,
Right.
no specific domains listed. So if they decided to go to GoDaddy and say, well, here's our judgment, and what do you think GoDaddy's going to say? What domains are you talking about? Like,
Right.
you got to have this list. Where's the list of domains? Do you think they get anything from GoDaddy?
No.
Well, if they don't want to get sued, they wouldn't.
You're right.
They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They're not going to just give some, schlub rock some domains. So how much money do they get?
0. Yeah.
Nothing. So they go to my bank and say, hey, look, I got a judgment. What do you think Bank of America's in?
For how much?
Sorry.
Where's the amount?
I know that the judge signed this, but where's the dollar amount? So what about the intellectual properties?
Well, that opens the door for them to get sued for the person who actually owns the damn thing. So.
Right. Because I actually filed it with the Library of Congress 100 years ago. So what happens if they decide to lift everything out of my book and say that they're going to claim that it's around? What happens then?
They're in violation. They get sued.
Right. So when that attorney told me that, I knew A, he didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground, and B, it's time for me to find someone else. so I found someone else. But that's what they're demanding. And this is how you know. So what was interesting is my intellectual properties attorney, the sharpest guy I ever knew, his name was Michael Blaine Brooks. He passed away in 2012. So obviously I would have my bulldog on this to handle it for anybody who's not around. So I had to, my typical attorney who handles my business matters said he didn't want to handle it. His name is Lloyd. So he gave me a referral. I didn't like the guy. So I ended up, this is one of these universe things. Like if you're ever in trouble or if you're ever worried about something, I know it's hard, because trust me, this was hard for me, but I had to let it go. I put out a bunch of inquiries to different attorneys, and then I just said, just let the right best attorney just contact me. And I let it go, which was difficult, because I knew that this was really unfair, and it bothered me. Like, I've had lawsuits before, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me, but this bothered me more because I knew it was so unfair. And so it was so weird, because the moment I let it go, it was in about 10 minutes, the assistant of the attorney that I ended up hiring emailed me and says he just so happens to have a phone call slot at 11:30 this morning. It was 9:45. Do you want it? I said, yep. So I talked to him on the phone, and I said, listen, I'm going to warn you. The guy that's the opposing counsel is an asshole. I've never heard anybody kind of conduct themselves in this way, so unprofessional. Because what he does is he starts screaming at opposing counsel on the phone. Immediately. Like, he picks up the phone, the moment the call goes through, he starts yelling at opposing attorney.
Trying to get into that.
Yeah. And you know what, he's very gentle, kind of a Zen guy, like a Middle Eastern guy, but he's just like really like super Joe. He's like, he's like, those are the guys I'm not worried about. He says, because if they really truly had a case, they would quietly go after you. The ones that brazenly go after you like that, like a bulldog, that means they know they don't have a case.
They're just trying to intimidate.
They're trying to intimidate you because they know they don't have anything but a house of cards. And I hired him immediately. Because I knew, when you know human psychology like that, you are my freaking guy, right? Hired him immediately. So, because I know, it's like, you get it. I just wanted to make sure he could handle it, because the last attorney that I had is like, oh, this guy, he was freaking out. Like, I can't believe this guy is just like trying to do the whole Michael Cullen thing or something, And so I thought that was interesting. So ever since I hired him, I just feel like, when you kind of give it to God or you give it to someone who's more capable, everything will work out, It'll work out. But in this case, though, as I'm trying to describe to you guys, is what happens if I decided to do nothing. They sued the company Success for Life. They did not sue me personally. So what happens in the event that I just completely lose? Say they even go back to court and ask for $20 million.
Shut it down.
What happens to Success for Life? Like, am I paying that money? Am I writing them a check?
No.
Tell me what happens.
You're going to hold the company.
I've already prepared for this, because what I usually do, and I'm going to describe this to you because we're going to take a quick break, but I already have, at all times, what I call my spares. I did this 2 years ago. I have another company already set up in California with the DBA, Success for Life. So none of you are going to be any wiser when I switch from Success for Life Inc. to, I'm not going to mention what it is. You will be none the wiser, because I already have the DBA in LA County for Success for Life. So what happens to Success for Life Inc.?
Close it down. Yeah. Fades to black.
Fades to black. So you can go to the bank where there's not going to be a bank account anymore and collect on your, non-judgment judgment, and that's it. And that's how you handle not dealing with a multi-year, $300,000 lawsuit. And you don't worry about it, and you keep sleeping like a baby every night. Does everybody understand how critical all these things are that I'm talking about? Now again, I don't want anybody to worry that somebody's going to sue you, but I want you to not worry if somebody does. And that's why and how. So we'll talk a little bit more about our setup stuff over the break. We're going to take about, 15 minutes? 15-minute break. You don't have to do anything.